I would like to talk to you today about mastering Quora. It's a question and answer platform, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I use it for our business. First of all, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Dylin Redling, and I co-founded a fire blog with my wife Allison called Retire by 45. We are from the San Francisco, Oakland area in California, and we started our blog about 2 years ago. So how did we get here? How are we here today? Just a little bit about our journey to get here. So Allison and I started working in the internet and tech sector in the late 90s. And we worked real hard for about 15 years. So from about 1999 to 2014, we worked. We saved, we did all the right things. We lived below our means, we were frugal, and we were well on our way to early retirement without even really knowing it at the time. Allison worked at some big companies like eBay and StubHub, and I worked at a lot of smaller startups like Lumosity and Ebates, a couple companies you probably know. In 2014, we did something which you may know as geographic arbitrage, where we moved from a very high cost of living place like San Francisco, 10 miles across the bay to Oakland, California, which is a city a lot of people are afraid of, but it's got some amazing neighborhoods, and it's actually beautiful. It's kind of the Brooklyn of San Francisco, if you will. But by doing that, it accelerated our path to early retirement by about 9 years. So when we did that, we started doing some travel, and we took a sabbatical. And after about 6 to 9 months, we were like, hey, pump the brakes. We don't have to go back to San Francisco and work our butts off anymore. Like, maybe we could actually just take a break and retire. And the first thing we did is we started a website called Experientify, which is actually a site about travel and having cool life experiences, thus the name Experientify. And then that segued into Retire by 45 when we discovered there's a community that's interested in retiring early. And we're like, oh, we did that, so why don't we write about it? We've already done it. So I'm going to talk to you about Quora. How many people are familiar with Quora, first of all? So I'd say 2/3 of you, and that's taking an impartial poll as I walked around the conference so far. It's about the same. Some people have no idea what it is, and some people are like, oh yeah, I love Quora. Either way, I hope you get something out of this, because I'm going to tell you, how to use it, even if you're very familiar with it. But basically, Quora refers to themselves as a place where you can go to ask questions that are important to you and get answers that are amazing. So it's a question and answer platform, but it's really meant to get deep, interesting, meaningful answers. Not all answers are that way, but if you use it that way, it'll help you in your business. And so just some stats on Quora. It was started in 2009 by a couple of executives from Facebook, Adam D'Angelo and Charlie Cheever. They grew the site to where it is now, which has over 200 million monthly unique visitors, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. It's a huge platform. So how did they do that? Well, they started with some high-profile contributors like President Obama, Hillary Clinton, Mark Cuban. And they combine that with, it's a very viral type of a site. So if you find an answer you like, you're sharing it with other people. So with those two components combined, it grew very rapidly. And it's, as I wrote here, there's over 400,000 topics, and it's got everything from science fiction to Marvel Comics to finance to bodybuilding to Topeka, Kansas. Whatever you're interested in, there's probably a topic for you to follow on Quora, which is really cool. Now, to get into the meat of this presentation, I'm going to start with a little story. It's kind of a fable, and I call it The Question and the Hockey Stick. And just by the name of it, you might be sort of sensing where I'm going with this a little bit. I had started Retire by 45, and I was already on Quora as a regular user, but then I thought, well, maybe I can answer some questions related to personal finance and retiring early. And so one day I stumbled upon this particular question. What should I learn in my 20s that will help me to financially retire at 35 and travel the world for the rest of my life? Like, what a cool question, right? Everybody wants to know how to do that when they're in their 20s or even later in life. But so I saw that, I was like, well, I know a little bit about that. I sort of did that. And so I'll throw my 2 cents in with an answer to that question. And this isn't the full answer, but I just want to show a snapshot. So basically, I wrote an answer that talked about 6 steps to being able to retire early. And I didn't think too much about it. I just wanted to get our name out there a little bit. And actually, I just wanted to answer the young person's question. I thought I can give them some interesting tips. So what happened? Well, to my surprise, the first day I got about 200 views on that answer, and I was like, "Ooh, that's pretty cool. 200 people checked out my answer. Wow." And then a week later, it shot up to 25,000. And I'm like, there's a little bit of a hockey stick here, but nothing crazy, but 25,000 people just on that one day, on day 10, or on day 7. And then on day 10, 3 days later, it was 55,000 views. And it was at that point where I was like, there's something to this platform. I didn't pay for that traffic, so 55,000 people now saw my answer. That's really cool. But it didn't stop there. Like, it just kept going. And I was kind of like a little dumbfounded, like, what's going on here? So it actually peaked on day 12 at over 80,000 views on that one day. And here's how it looked. I took a snapshot of this. They have a stats section of Quora. So in the first 3 weeks, it was viewed 742,000 times, almost 3,000 upvotes. Upvotes are kind of like likes, if you're not familiar, and 935 shares. So I just wanted to illustrate the power of the platform in terms of traffic, just to get you a little excited about what you might be able to do with it. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, it's cool that you got traffic or you got views on your answer in Quora, but what about to your site? Did you get any traffic to your site? And the answer is yeah. So how do you do that? Well, fortunately, what I did is I subtly embedded a link to our site in part 5 of my 6-part answer. And in part 5, I was talking about investing, like compound interest and dollar cost averaging. And I said, if you don't understand these concepts or you don't know how to implement them, either Google them or come check out my website where I talk about it. And I just put a link, Retire by 45. And nothing heavy-handed. I'm not trying to sell them anything, a course. So, it's just, hey, if you want to learn a little bit more, that's what I talk about on my website. And so here are my Google Analytics from that. And again, this was totally unexpected. So just by having that one link embedded in that question or that answer, you can see when I started, the site was pretty much brand new. This was about a year and a half ago. I was only at 27 page views the day I wrote that answer. So basically nothing, really, 0. But on day, 1 week into it, it was over 500. And then a few days after that, 900. It peaked at about 1,600. Basically 10 days after I wrote the answer. And then it leveled off around 600, but that tail kept going for a while. So it wasn't like I just got a big, huge hit and then all the traffic disappeared. When you get traffic from Quora, it actually can be very sticky as well. So I find that there are 3 ways you can use Quora for your business. The first one is for your brand. So if you're answering questions on Quora, you're going to be able to set yourself up as a thought leader. So whatever your niche is, concentrate on what your specific niche is, answer a lot of questions, and if you're good and you provide a lot of great content, you'll be considered a thought leader, and you'll get a label called Most Viewed Writer in blank. So when I put together this presentation, I was kind of curious. I hadn't looked at it in a while. I was like, okay, I'm the most viewed writer. I knew I was a most viewed writer in retirement planning, but I didn't realize I was #1, actually. So I was like, oh, cool. So you'll, before you know it, you'll start to get yourself out there and become an expert in your field. So like any social profile or social network, you create a profile in Quora. And here are a few ways to create a compelling profile. The first thing is you're going to have a header with a title. My title is just Expert on Fire, Financial Independence, Retiring Early. That's going to show up on all the answers that you provide. So right away, you want that to be something that's going to show that you're some sort of expert or you know what you're talking about. Some people do things funny or clever, whatever you think is going to work for you, because that's really what people are going to see for the most part. But if they click on your name, they'll go into your bio. And this is where you'll want to put a little bit more about yourself. Why are you an expert? Why do people care? What makes you, know what it is that you're talking about? And then finally, you of course want to have some links to your website and your social media as well. So that's how you create a nice, compelling profile. Now, the second thing you can use Quora for is what I alluded to in the story, which is for traffic. Again, Quora's audience is over 200 million monthly unique visitors. So outside of sites like Facebook and LinkedIn, this is quite a large audience to really tap into for free. You don't have to buy ads or anything. You just answer with good quality answers. And this little screenshot is my total. You can look at your lifetime stats. So when I put the presentation together a few weeks ago, I was at 1.8 million views, over 7,000 upvotes, and 1.4 thousand shares. And again, this is just to really illustrate what you can do with this platform. And to be honest, I don't even write as much as I really should be on Quora. So if if you really go at it, you can probably get a lot of traffic. And then there's a couple other ways you can get traffic from Quora as well. It's not just on their platform. So if you ever notice when you're typing in searches in Google, a lot of the top search results will actually be Quora answers. If it's a really good answer, Google's going to want to put that in their search results. So that's another way you can get traffic. And then the third way is through some top publications like Inc. and Time and Business Insider. I've had some of my answers posted in some of these some of these publications. So it's a pretty cool thing when you see that happen. And this is just to give you an idea of like how I think of Quora answers. I think of it as an extension of my blog. I think of it as sort of like a mini version of what I normally do with my blog. To give you an example, when I write a blog piece, it's usually about 2,000 words. I try to make my blog post kind of rich and deep. With Quora, I usually go for about 400 to 500 words. And so it's enough to whet the appetite, it's enough to answer the question, but it's not getting super deep. And the hope is that you get people interested in what you're writing about, and then if they want to learn more, they can go explore your website as well. And then the third way that I use Quora for my business is actually my favorite. I like this even more than the traffic, to be quite honest, because if you're like me, if you're creating content, and whether you're a blogger, a podcaster, you're creating courses, YouTube videos, whatever it is, it's always hard to come up with new ideas, right? What are people going to be interested in? What's new and different that hasn't been covered 1,000 times already? So that's one of the things that I find I get a lot out of using Quora. So what I do is first test a lot of different things, and this will help you find your voice too. So if you're a relatively new blogger, test out different styles. Be funny on one, serious, emotional. Do a long answer. Create an answer with a lot of photos or images. So test out a lot of different things and see what resonates. And then track your answers. So I'm kind of a spreadsheet geek anyway. I track everything. And I track every answer I put in Quora, and I create my own scoring system. So I encourage you to do something similar. And my scoring system is comprised of how many views I get with how many actions I get on those as well. So how many upvotes and how many shares. And the idea there is that you might get an answer that gets a lot of views, but people aren't very engaged with it, or vice versa. So I look for ones that have a combination of both, and when I see that, I realize, hey, this is something I could repurpose. I could repurpose it as a bigger, fuller piece of content, whatever it is. Again, a blog post, video, etc. Now, I just want to give you a few examples of answers that I did turn into bigger pieces of content. I'll give you 3 examples. So the first one is my slack off answer. The question was, has anybody slacked off in their 20s but become successful in their 30s and 40s? And when I read that, I was like, hey, that's me. I kind of goofed off in my 20s. I was working in a restaurant. I wasn't really thinking about working in the real world. And then I got serious about it, and I got, started learning about finance and that sort of thing, investing. And so this answer, kind of resonated with people, so I turned it into a fuller blog post. So the original answer, again, was shorter, a couple of little examples. The blog post, I put fuller, bigger examples about how Allison and I slacked off, but we kind of pulled it together over time and got it, we're able to retire in our 40s. My second example is my reaction answer. And the question was, what was the reaction of your family when you retired early? So is anyone out here already retired early? Big earn. But that's great. If you haven't gotten there yet, you will. And let me tell you, when you're going to get interesting reactions, especially from your family members. Just to give you a quick example, Allison's dad is a workaholic, so he couldn't understand why we would want to retire early. Well, you're in your 40s, you should still be working. My mom, on the other hand, is a worrywart. So, oh my God, do you have enough money? Are you sure? Like, that's crazy. Why are you retiring early? So those were some of the things I talked about in this answer. And then I turned it into a much fuller blog post where I talked about how the reactions I get from anybody I might meet, like at a conference, and the reactions are all over the place. It's those two. Some people are envious. Some people are just super psyched. Actually, a lot of people are really psyched, and they're like, I want to do that. How do I do that? And those are my favorite reactions because I'm like, dude, come and talk. I'll talk your ear off about how to do that. I'll talk to you all day about how to do that. But some people just are confused, and nobody at this conference would be like that, but other people are like, that doesn't make any sense. And then my third example is a question about advice. So somebody asked, what is one piece of simple advice that actually changed your life? And you'll see questions like this on Quora, like, what's one thing I can do? Like, give me one example, not like 10 or 50. And my answer to this was, it was a story actually about my wife, Allison. When we met, we were working in a restaurant, like I mentioned, in Times Square in New York. And we made lots of money for us at the time. We were in our 20s. It was all cash. So I would take all that cash and I'd shove it in my pockets. Whoops, that's the mic. And crumple it up and all that. And not even thinking about, what I was doing with that money. No respect for it whatsoever. And Allison was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You need to respect that money. You worked really hard to earn that money. So she just taught me a super simple lesson, which was fold it up, put it in order, nice and neat, in your wallet, done. Respect that money. And to this day, that advice resonates with me. And I even get choked up when I think about it because it's such a silly, simple piece of advice, but it did impact the way I thought about money going forward. So I got a great response from that answer, and I turned it into a blog post where I added 3 more lessons that Allison gave me. If you want to know what those are, you have to go to the website. So I won't give everything away here. Now, where do you find questions to answer? So there are a few different places you can go to find questions to answer. So the first one is in your feed, and it's like a Facebook feed or a LinkedIn feed. It's going to feed you information about whatever you're interested in, all the topics you follow. So for me, I follow a couple dozen topics. Most of them I'm not an expert in, but a few of them I am, and so I'll find a few niches, a few nuggets that I can answer there. There's also an answer tab. And once you've been answering questions for a little while, you'll actually get people requesting answers from you because they know you've answered a lot of questions in your area of expertise. And the third one is just, you can use the search box and search under anything, and you'll be surprised what kind of questions you'll find in Quora with all those users. And sure enough, you'll find something that resonates with you. Now, it's great to find all these questions, but how do you find the ones that are good questions? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of answers. There's a lot of good ones and bad ones. How do you find the good ones? Well, one way is to look to see how many people are following that question. If there's a lot of followers and not a lot of answers, boom, there's an opportunity. That means people are interested in that, but not a lot of people know how to answer that question. Secondly, poor answers. As much as I love Quora, there's some really bad answers on Quora that just will make you scratch your head like, what are these people thinking? That doesn't answer the question, awful grammar, like whatever. So when you see that, that's a huge opportunity because you can answer that question with something really cool and interesting and intelligent, and you're going to go to the top of that. The cream is going to rise in the platform. And finally, what resonates? So when I was giving those examples, I was talking about things that resonated with me because I had personal stories that I could tell. So a lot of times you'll see a question and you're going to be like, boom, that resonates with me because I totally have a story that makes sense for that, or I feel just really strongly about that. And when you add those ingredients to your answer, it also will really rise your presence on the platform. Now, here are a few additional tips on writing your answers, and this also goes for writing in general that I find. First of all, find your writing zone. What I mean by that is where, when, and how do you work well? So for me, it's in the afternoon. It's after I've eaten and worked out. It's with a big cup of coffee. It's listening to music that's sort of chanty, like not a lot of lyrics. For you, it might be early in the morning. It might be with a glass of Chardonnay. It might be with heavy metal music or jazz. So find that. Structure. I can't tell you how many times I've seen an answer that's a text wall. Like, you don't want to read those because it could be the best content, but visually it looks awful and you don't want to spend your time reading it. So have nice breaks, have bullet points, use bolding, use italics, use images. Linking, I talked about that before. Be strategic when you link. Quora can actually kick you off the platform if you're too spammy or you're too salesy. So when you link to your site, put it in context of the answer and make it flow properly. And persistency, don't get discouraged. Just answer lots of questions. The first few dozen probably won't, drive a ton of traffic, but maybe number 21 will, or 25. And then I put together sort of an idea of how you might want to think about answering questions, in a strong, coherent way. And I came up with the idea of the Wizard of Oz answer. Tin Man, or Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion. Brains, heart, and courage. Brains, just be intelligent with your answers. Be logical. Actually answer the question. Again, there's a lot of answers out there that are not like that at all. So really think about how you can answer it in an intelligent way. Heart. At the keynote, they talked a lot about being yourself and being authentic. And it's the same with this. If you are authentic and real and emotional, your answers are going to really shoot up there. And finally, courageous. Don't be afraid to be a little bit controversial, challenge people, be different. Being different, I think, is really important. There's so much of the same stuff out there. And this is my last slide here is just getting great at answers, just a few additional things you can do. One is get a lot of inspiration, so read a lot of other bloggers, read a lot of other answers. There's one blogger that I like a lot named James Altucher. He's a little bit in the finance space. He's very controversial. He's got a lot of kind of crazy ideas, but that's the reason I like him, because he walks on the edge, and he says he knows he's on the right track if he elicits an OMFG response, and you know what OMFG means. So if you think about that, like, he really is looking for a reaction. But for me, I'm looking more for my own feeling of like goosebumps or chills. When I get that feeling, that's when I know that I'm on the right track. I get it every once in a while, and when I do, I just can't wait to get that content out there. And that's it. So thanks a lot, and I don't know if we have time for questions. I'm not sure what the timing is, but here's my media to get in touch with me if anyone has any questions outside of this forum as well. So, hi, yes.
You talked about having to be strategic with links for people that might be financial planners or agents or something like that of some sort. Have you seen them get dinged or flagged in the system?
I haven't. So the question was about, have I seen anyone getting dinged or flagged for linking? Is that right? Were you asking specifically about? Right. No, I see a lot of professionals who answer questions, a lot of financial professionals and others, and that's perfectly fine. I think you just want to be sure that you're not overly pitching your services in a heavy-handed way. And I think even for that, you wouldn't necessarily get dinged by Quora. I think you have to go pretty extreme to actually get kicked off. I just threw that out there as like an extreme caution. But I also want to mention that even if it's not that extreme, you could just turn users off if you're a little too salesy. But I always recommend putting in a link. I've answered questions in the past where I didn't link at all, which is fine. But then I realized, hey, this is an opportunity to link. I mean, as long as it makes sense, I'll always try to link in there. Hi. Have I done any? I've got some courses, yeah. I don't have any, well, I've got some videos on YouTube that are pieces of my courses, but I've got a few courses. I've got a free course, but. Oh, have I embedded videos in Quora? I have not, no, but I've seen people do that. Yeah.
Last question.
Last question? Okay, one more. Yes, sir. The question was, is there any SEO penalty for having similar content on Quora in your blog? Is that sort of the idea? So you're not duplicating content on two different platforms? That could potentially be a problem. I don't know the exact, implications, but what I do try to do is make it different enough that I haven't experienced that issue. I have taken blog posts and put them on like Medium and other platforms, almost word for word. But with Quora, I don't do that. I really take, like I said, like a smaller version of the content, like 400 to 500 words, and I blow it up into something a lot more deeper and more massive. So, cool. Great. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.